Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out on a holiday weekend. I'm so excited for this chat. We are here with Rachel Krantz, who is the author of our, what month is it now? August nonfiction pick. I'm like, time is moving so fast, which is Open, an Uncensored Memoir of Love, Liberation, and Non-Monogamy. She is the host of Help Existing, a new podcast offering help on existing. She is the namer of Bustle and one of its 3 founding editors. She served as senior features editor at Bustle for 3 years and senior news editor before that. She also worked at the Daily Beast as homepage editor and at the nonprofit Mercy for Animals as the lead writer. Thank you so much for being here, Rachel.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here. And thanks for everyone who is here.
Awesome. So first of all, congratulations on your publishing debut. How has that experience been for you? Because I know that you've been preparing for years to release this book. It's such a serious piece of investigative journalism and kind of the first of its kind for the polyamorous space. So how did you navigate this kind of like trailblazing book in the publishing industry?
Thanks. Well, it's been definitely a ride. I would say mostly really positive. I think I was sort of bracing for an intense amount of hate mail or trolling or whatever else. And there's been some of that for sure, but really hardly at all compared to just like the love or the messages in my DMs saying like they really related to it or appreciated it. So like that's been very heartening and wonderful to just get all that love. I was also lucky that the book got a lot of attention, a lot of press. And so it's felt like very intense and wonderful and like a lot of people talking about it, but then at the same time, it hasn't sold as well as I was hoping yet. So there's this kind of weird thing of like, on the one hand, it feels like a lot of attention, but then it's kind of like sometimes this feeling of like, oh, I just stripped naked and a bunch of people like rubbernecked it didn't want to take me home. Like, so It kind of brings up all these feelings of like, you know, self-worth being tied up with the book, with writing, with, you know, it's so personal. So it's so hard not to take it personally, but it's for that reason, it's a really good opportunity to work on, you know, separating my definition of success from capitalism, from these more external measures, and trying to focus more on the person-to-person interactions and those messages as measures of success. But yeah, it's been a lot to work with, and I think thought I was super prepared, because you even see in the book itself, I'm kind of drawing on these other writers who talk about what it's like writing personally as a woman, and it's not like I'd never posted things online before. So I kind of thought, yeah, it's going to be intense, but like I'm well prepared for this. And yeah, I definitely felt more emotionally exhausted by the whole ride than I expected to. So it's been humbling.
That makes so much sense in what you're saying about having your personal worth tied up with kind of the success of something that is so personal to you. I relate to that so much with Sapph-Lit. And yeah, untangling your, you know, self-esteem with your success through capitalism is so hard. And I can't imagine how that is with something that is so personal as Open. And I would love to hear about like the preparation and the research that went into this, because you have psychologists, you have voice recordings, you have emails, you have interviews, and so many footnotes. And I just would love to hear about how you kind of like pieced it all together. What did that look like for you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, part of it was just living it, right? And as you read in the book, I wasn't really sure it would ever be a book, but because I was a journalist, I was already writing about it a little bit. And that's also just how I understand the world, is by like reading and researching and doing interviews. So I was already, you know, interviewing Kathy Labriola about jealousy, or trying to read all these books about non-monogamy. at the same time, I was keeping a journal, as I had been for years, but then decided, to try to consciously keep a record of what was happening as a way to sort of feel some semblance of control, especially as there got to be more and more gaslighting, and Adam was saying, like, you're remembering things wrong, or that didn't happen. I felt this impulse to record, which was not new. I've had that in some ways since I was a kid, this desire to like have a recorder as witness to potentially traumatic moments. And it just, that was a big part of it with him. So I was gathering these things with his consent, with other people's consent, but again, like not knowing, am I just crazy here, or am I going to actually do something with this one day? But the idea that I might became a light at the end of the tunnel. And I was still, reading and doing some interviews, but it wasn't really till I emerged from that I really started reading more, kind of as a way of backtracking and trying to understand what had just happened, and decided eventually to write the book proposal and do it. And that was like an effort to, I guess, gain some sense of control over my narrative again, to a really autonomy back of like, I am capable, and this was for something more than just me, and to make sense of like how I had sort of slowly, incrementally become so liberated in certain ways, come into my queerness, and on the other hand, like slowly lost my mind in favor of trusting this man's mind over my own. Like, how did this happen? And it struck me that I had a really unusual, thorough record of exactly how that happens. And so that, even more than the story of non-monogamy, kind of drove me to do it, because I was like, this is something I've seen other women go through. I think it's valuable to show how this happens and can happen to anyone. And so as I was writing it, that's when the majority of the interviews also happened, and even more research, because I sort of just wrote it narratively, and then it became clear like where I needed to explain and have more context. And so I used interviews, I used research to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the parts of the recordings that you have is these emails between you and Adam. And I found that so interesting as a very intentional form of communication, where you could share your feelings about your relationship. And how did you decide to do that with you and Adam? And how did that become like a place where you can kind of unpack things? And have you carried this practice into new relationships?
Yeah, the emails was mostly a part of our early, falling in love. And he was a really good writer, and he wrote me beautiful emails back, which I don't excerpt because people own their own writing, so it can get a little tricky with that. And also it just wasn't necessary. But so that was really just like, as I was falling in love, I felt moved to write these letters and to kind of make sense of things. And also my early grapplings with jealousy. It was kind of a way to try to, I knew that part of why he fell in love with me was my writing. And so it was a way to kind of express what I was feeling and try to like get back to him, or this feeling that, at least here was some way I was special, or could get back in his heart and reconnect. But as the relationship went on, there were fewer and fewer of those emails. I did have one relationship since, which involved a lot of emails over the pandemic, mostly because it was long distance. And, that person kind of became my muse for a while there. So I think it's a pattern that'll continue likely, but yeah, it doesn't always have a long shelf life depending on the situation.
That's so fair. I love it still. So you touched on this a little bit already, but one of the parts of the book, of course, why we chose to read it for Sapph-Lit, is that it is a very queer book. And you shared that ethical non-monogamy and polyamory helped you discover and explore the fact that you're bisexual. And I know that you were interviewed by Jen Winston, who wrote Greedy, for Greenlight Books. And we love Jen in this house, of course. And in the book, you kind of share that you claim that title as a greedy bisexual. How did you come to understand that narrative of greediness for yourself?
I mean, a lot of it was through Jen's book and subsequent conversations and friendship with her. Even in the book itself, I used different terms: bisexual, pansexual, fluid, queer. I say in the book, like, the only label that really felt like it fit was imposter. Whether I throughout my 20s put heteroflexible or bisexual or queer, pansexual, I was just like, I don't know what I am.
Yeah.
My conversations with Jen really helped complicate my understanding of the word bisexual, that it was not talking about just, an even 50-50 split, cis men and cis women, that it was inclusive of all genders, that it was potentially more fluid than that. And she also kind of talked to me about the power of claiming that label for her. And yeah, I think that I was still hesitant, like, even until basically the book came out. That was sort of when I came out in the way of claiming the label. And like she said, once I did, I felt a huge sense of relief and empowerment, but still sometimes imposter syndrome for sure, of like, oh, well, I haven't, been dating any women or non-binary or trans people lately. And so, like, do I have a right to be claiming that label? But also, I'm still on the apps trying to like message women and they never message me back. So I'm kind of like back where I started, a little disappointed that like more women are not, trying to reach out. I think there's still a lot of understandable skepticism of, bisexual, non-monogamous women. I don't think it's fair, but I understand why people might have had frustrating experiences, especially if they're lesbian. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people see that I'm, in a cohabitating partnership with a cis man, and it's like I can call myself what I want, but they are wary. And I get that, but at the same time, I'm like, damn it, like, I'm just trying to trust that you'll come back.
I still want to date women, and I still want to have sex with women, and that is still biphobic at the end of the day. Yeah, absolutely. Another kind of part of the book that really struck me was how you spoke about and unpacked your jealousy in the face of someone who was constantly trying to rationalize your emotions, which, emotions cannot be, condensed into these little boxes and put away so neatly. And it's a really common misconception that E&M polyam people do not experience jealousy, or can't experience jealousy if this is a lifestyle that they want to live and move life through. So Adam, of course, treated it as this kind of like irrational flaw that needed to be cured. And I'm wondering how you handle jealousy now and how you see jealousy in relation to polyamory.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see jealousy now as, like Kathy Labriola writes about, a smoke alarm, and it's there to alert you that there might be a fire, but it's up to you to check the batteries and see, like, is there actually a fire, or do I just kind of like need to recharge? And I think in this case, you see me struggling with jealousy for many different reasons, being my first non-monogamous relationship, my first dom-sub relationship, so the power dynamic was already super uneven. But I think first and foremost, I was feeling jealousy because it was a warning sign. The smoke, there was a fire. I was being coerced, I was being gaslit, I was having my feelings called stupid, I was being lied to about some pretty serious things that I won't reveal because I don't want to spoil it. So I think when I emerged from that, I realized, yeah, like jealousy is not something to just necessarily be eradicated at all costs. It's something to listen to and examine, and it is up to you to untangle like what's your shit to work on and what is a warning sign that you're not getting your needs met or being respected in your dynamic. And so now, I'm very humble with jealousy because I just feel like, yeah, you never know at all. And the dynamic I'm in with my cohabitating partner, I've hardly had to deal with it at all because he's just way less non-monogamously inclined than I am. But I will say what's different is perhaps because now I'm the one with more experience, because I feel so secure in the relationship, because I'm still dating other people. I find myself like the idea of him being with other people is exciting to me, whereas before it was, with Adam, it was always like, a little bit in my mind, but now I'm like very turned on by the idea. When we went to like a play party together and he was like giving other women massages because he's a massage therapist. I was just like, oh my God, please take it further. And that was like never something I really felt without him. I could maybe slip into that if he was really, we were in the middle of something together, I could start to feel turned on by it, but the initial reaction was always like, and now it's not. So I just think it really depends on the dynamic. But that said, who knows what it'll be like when he hopefully eventually like has other more serious partners. And I've had to deal with jealousy with like other people I was dating, knowing they're dating other people, but it's been nothing on par with what it was in the book. But I really wanted to pick that because that's a lot of people's experience, is that it's very ugly, very challenging. And it's why a lot of people try non-monogamy and then swear it off because they have a really bad, uncomfortable experience. And part of that is the adjustment. And part of that is maybe just that it's not the right person to be doing non-monogamy with, that there's not a solid enough foundation, or that person is expecting too much from them too fast.
No, I totally agree. And my best friend and platonic life partner is non-monogamous. And I've learned so much from her and her relationships about polyamory because of that. And before meeting her and before, all of these conversations that we've had, the only thing that I would hear of non-monogamy is, usually hetero couples who are on the verge of breaking up, trying to figure something out, feeling insecure in their relationship. So they open it up in like a kind of act of desperation. And obviously when you move into, non-monogamy from a very insecure place, it's not going to work. And that's where I feel jealousy just like breeds and thrives, is in that like place of insecurity. But when you have a partner that you love and you feel secure with them, you're like, that feeling of kind of compersion, of like joy for their joy and pleasure for their pleasure, like begins to come out, which is like what I just loved about this book, is showing that like that was always a possibility and that was always there. And while this may have been kind of like an entryway into like the bigger world of non-monogamy for you, you didn't immediately swear it off because of this like horrible bad experience. That wasn't a question. That was just me being.
No, totally. Yeah. And I recommend Dedeker Winston, who's in the book and writer and host of Polyamory. She actually has a new course, I think, online about like building a solid foundation, which is specifically for, couples looking to open up and really making that point of like, you need that secure foundation if you're trying to open up a pre-existing relationship, and really, dissecting what makes that up. And I love that you just used the term platonic life partner. Like that's another thing that non-monogamy really gave me, even though the term romantic friendship drove me fucking crazy, that Adam insisted calling all his other, sexual and romantic relationships. He was like, they're not relationships, they're romantic friendships. And that was supposed to be this way that I was like feeling reassured. But meanwhile, he was, telling them that he loved them. And it's again, that kind of inconsistency. But I feel like non-monogamy has allowed me to see this wider breadth of, the ways. There's like the relationship anarchy smorgasbord, which has like all these different ways you can be in relationship. And yeah, just seeing how many of my friendships, especially now, I would say in the last few years, when I've leaned on my platonic friendships more than ever before, through writing this book, through healing, through pandemic, all of that, like those are shaping up to be the great loves of my life. And I love, and I do see them as romantic friendships, and I do
Totally
see
agree.
those boundaries as a little more fluid, but that's also not to mean that it's like there's not boundaries, you know what I mean? Like I'm open to the possibility that things can shift over time, or they have in the past. I've gone from, lover to friend with people like Miranda, and that's okay. But yeah, that things can be romantic, but still platonic is like a very new, great concept. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like we should just normalize thinking of that as, I don't know. Have you guys had any sort of
so
public declarations or anything like that?
I mean, so I'm currently at my parents' house with her partner, my metamor, and a friend of ours, and we're having like the best time. She's currently reading Open on the Beach. She's like 90 pages away from finishing.
Oh my God.
And she like wish me luck on my way back up to the house. But yeah, she and I have been best friends for over 6 years. And within the last year, we've really solidified that term partner for us. And in those conversations, like I wouldn't consider myself sexually polyamorous, but in terms of how I view my friendships, I view them in equal standing to my romantic and sexual relationships. And our friendship is absolutely romantic, and our partnership is very romantic. And we take each other on dates, and we buy each other flowers and surprise each other with gifts and cuddle and have movie nights. And it is a very romantic relationship. And everyone thinks we're dating, or at least have had fucked once, twice, 3 times. But no, that's never been a dynamic in our relationship, but we just view each other with the respect that a, traditional sexual partnership would entail. And she's like my family. And we don't cohabitate, but we've definitely decided that we would throttle each other if we lived together. But it's definitely opened my eyes to how polyamory, can kind of shift the way that you think about friendships and hold them in equal standing and give them the care and love that they deserve.
That's so cool. I love that. And it's great to normalize and talk about that. And yeah, I mean, that is a big thing that non-monogamy has given me, is just like more understanding of the many different ways people can be in relationship, and appreciating letting them take their organic form. And I've met people who are in relationships like you just described, who do call it, their primary partner romantic relationship, but it's asexual. And so it's all about, again, like how do you get to decide what to label it, how to think of it, however works best for you and the people in your life.
Yeah. What would you want people who are curious about ENM and polyamory to get out of this book? And what would you want to tell yourself at the start of your ENM journey?
What I'd like for people to get out of this book is a sense of possibility and less shame, I guess, around whatever their desires are or struggles are. I also love hearing that reading it, gave them a long reading list. That was really important to me, to kind of give tastes of all the many books that informed this book. And so I think you can kind of reference it as, okay, here's what to read next, based on what was interesting to you. So yeah, I would love if it makes people read more and learn more about it. And even if they're not non-monogamous themselves, that hopefully they're less prejudice towards people who are after reading it, and have a more nuanced view of like, oh, non-monogamous people can be flawed, they can be in bad relationships, they're just like us, it's just anything else. There's going to be any range of outcomes. And yeah, what I would have said to myself is, you're not crazy, and you will make art out of this situation. And this is really hard, and you will have to get out of this dynamic eventually, but you're not wrong that this is kind of where you need to be right now.
Yeah.
So I would have, and I think I almost did. I could feel my future self talking to me as I was living it. So I think I did say that to myself.
I love that. So even if people are not polyam, I think there's obviously still so much to get out of this book with respect to BDSM, dom-sub dynamics, bisexuality, queerness, and of course, navigating dating a narcissist. So for me personally, the gaslighting and narcissistic tendencies of Adam were what brought the book with me, or what made me bring the book with me to several therapy sessions.
Wow.
So extremely validating of my personal experience. So I would love to know, how do you have grace with yourself when hindsight is so clearly 2020 and you can see the signs and red flags from the start? Asking for a friend, totally not for myself.
First of all, that's amazing to hear you brought it to therapy. Like, that's so validating, and that's been the most meaningful thing to come out of all this, is just the messages from basically all women saying that, yes, this was my experience, and like I was blaming myself until I understood it better from reading this book, or helped free them in some way. And I've also since gotten a few, not many, but a few messages from men saying, this book made me realize I'm being the Adam and I need to change. And that was really amazing to hear. And I know someone left a relationship because of this book. So all of that, I have to just be like, okay, that's the measure of success, not how many points. But yeah, so grace with myself. I think it was hard to go back and admit to myself just how bad it was. Like, it was not even till doing press for this book did I use the term abuse directly. You see me even kind of sidestepping that in the book itself. Yeah. There's other people I'm quoting who use that term and who used it over and over again, but I was very wary of it. So I just wanted to, I guess, like, depict with compassion and examine with compassion where I was coming from, where he was coming from. And even though it was hard to see, it wasn't hard for me to have grace for myself or for him, really. I think because I was talking to so many meditation teachers, I was talking to so many therapists, this book was a way of having an excuse to get hours of free therapy because I was doing interviews, and I'm still doing that with my podcast. I'm like, all right, I don't have money for all these therapists, so like, let's just let my therapy be other people's therapy. So that was very helpful and validating to have these psychologists telling me, like, this is real, like, and they're reviewing verbatim transcripts. This is not based on my memory, even, like, this is based on his exact words and the exchanges, and to have them look through those transcripts and scenes and dissect exactly what's going on, and then to be able to translate that for the reader. Then that really was an important part of my healing, and very much wasn't hard for me to forgive myself, because I was like, you're turning something out of this that's going to hopefully help other people, and also just to internalize, like, this wasn't my fault. It's not really anyone's fault. He needs to be responsible for his actions, but just for me, like, framing it in terms of evil, great, fault, victim, abuser, like, these are all fine terms for other people to use, but for me personally, I found a way of looking at it that was more useful.
Yeah. And how do you view your relationship with Adam now? Because as a reader, of course, we're biased in that we're rooting for you and we can see the red flags so clearly from the start. I mean, I literally like took a red pen and like drew a little flag.
Oh my God, I love it.
The little like actions and words that he was saying. But I imagine that it's, of course, so much more complex for you. Does your journalistic mind clash with like your personal, like, of course, human feelings?
I think it's hard having this come out and not talking to him about how it's been, even though that's been the advice I've gotten from therapists and Buddhist monks and lawyers and all of that. They're like, don't go there, at least for now.
Monks and lawyers agree.
Yeah.
One thing here.
They were all like, no, don't. They felt like that line of communication should not be open at this point. But I don't view that as necessarily forever. I do feel at a place where I don't worry that I would ever fall back into something with him. But I can imagine, hopefully in the future, being able to have a conversation and see what kind of reflection this spurred. And I hope it led to a lot of growth. Like,
yeah,
how can it not? He has a lot of confusion, as we all do, but I just think this is a pretty epic way to be called out, and I can't imagine that it hasn't humbled or at least made him a little more having to reflect or be careful when repeating this pattern with other partners. So I hope to have that conversation one day, but I still view from afar with a lot of compassion and love and gratitude, for this era of my life, for not suing me, for not trying to stop this, really. And I feel gratitude for that.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you're there, because for my friend, not for me personally, obviously just for my friend, the anger, of course, is like still there with myself and with the person. But yeah, reading that
and
book.
That's an important part of the process too.
Oh,
you don't want to skip over that.
We never want to skip it. We want to feel our feelings. But no, yeah, your book definitely reframed where it's like, oh, maybe this wasn't intentional. And maybe there's, some grace and there's space for that down the line. But besides someone ending a relationship after reading Open, is there a reaction or message from a reader that's like really stood out to you?
The reader who wrote to me that she read so there's one chapter where it's a pretty much verbatim conversation, and psychologists are in the footnotes throughout commenting on exactly decoding what's happening, the mental gymnastics of the gaslighting. And she said that she read that chapter and then she found herself rereading it, and she realized like this is like the 5th time I'm reading it and I'm crying, and that she hadn't really understood or forgiven herself for the dynamic, and that after reading it, she felt free. And that was like, wow, that's the highest praise I could get if someone reads it and feels free in a sense of grace for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I know you've interviewed Antonia Ingress before on Sirens and Muses, and I'm doing the same interview. Well, not the same as you, but I'm interviewing her in a few weeks for Sapph-Lit for Sirens and Muses as well. And I would love to hear your thoughts on her novel, and if I should definitely ask her something.
Ooh. Well, I loved her novel. I thought it was super just compelling and like fun to read, and I learned a lot about art, and I also just, of course, really appreciated its complex depiction of bisexuality, and that it wasn't this kind of thing of like, if she it didn't feel like this framework of like, if she chooses the man in the end, like it negates her bisexuality. Like it was much more complex than that. And you see how the dynamics are different and the different things she's getting out of each of them. In terms of what to ask her, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I guess asking her, as I'm sure you will, about how she thought about depicting bisexuality and how her own experience informed that was interesting for me to hear about.
Yeah, I loved how messy it was. It was so just like disaster, chaotic, bisexual college days, and it really took me back. I absolutely loved it. And being a New York girl myself, it was very, very fun to read. Okay, so we're going to move on into the rapid fire round. And for everyone who is listening, if you have any questions for Rachel, drop them in the chat and we will ask them afterwards. So what are you currently reading?
Ooh, I'm just finishing The Hop by Diana Clark. She wrote Thin Girls, which is another fantastic novel that came out a few years ago about kind of like eating disorders and queerness. And this one is about a sex worker told from multiple perspectives, and it's so good. She's really good. She's super feminist, entertaining, funny, smart. Yeah, really recommend it.
I'm absolutely adding that to my TBR. Is there a book that you recommend everyone read?
Everyone read. Oh my God.
Besides Open.
That everyone read. I'm like, I have a hard time being prescriptive like that.
Or like or is there a book that you constantly are recommending to everyone? Like if someone's like, do you have a book recommendation? Your go-to book recommendation. So mine is, Just Kids by Patti Smith, or The Argonauts, or Detransition Baby, like that kind of top tier book that you think most people would like.
That most people would like, I'm not sure, but a few books that I've been recommending particularly often. 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, which is about the fact that the average human lifespan is 4,000 weeks, and kind of combating some of the tendency towards future thinking and always needing to be productive. And it's just really good reframe, like
love, need.
How to Break Up with Your Phone was really useful for phone addiction and creating more boundaries around social media and screen time. And then the book you see under the painting there is called Your True Home by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I've used that every day for several years, and it just has one teaching per page, and I sort of use that as my, like, I guess, kind of like how people pull a tarot card. It's whatever day of the year it is. That's like my lens, as I try to look at the world through that lens of that teaching that day, and it's just, each teaching is like a line or a paragraph, no more, and it's really a useful book.
I love that. Kind of a tangent, but would you consider yourself, because you're talking about Buddhist monks and kind of teachings, would you consider yourself like a spiritual person?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that's like a phrase I used to cringe at, but I don't. I mean, over the pandemic, I went to like Zoom Buddhist sanghas many times a week with Tashi, the monk in the book, and we continue to talk together a lot. And I think my spirituality is also psychedelic informed. It's also dancing in nature is one of my favorite ways to sort of connect with something larger than myself. So I view it through a lot of different lenses.
Yeah. Have you read and or watched How to Change Your Mind with Michael Pollan?
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic. And I am now convinced I need to try LSD. I never have. That journey is waiting for me.
Yeah, it's great stuff, and definitely something I'm interested in writing more about in the future, I think.
Oh, keep an eye out for that for sure. Okay, back to the rapid fire, which has not been so rapid, but that's totally okay. Is there a book coming out soon that you are excited to read?
Oh my gosh. Book coming out soon that I'm excited to read. Lin Ma's short stories.
Bliss Montage.
Yeah.
I got an arc of it. It's
Nice.
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
so excited for you to read it. Yes.
Yeah.
Did you take up an unusual quarantine activity?
Not unusual, but probably the main thing was baking all the time, baking every day. And like I read about in the book, that was sort of my therapy,
Yeah.
was just to sort of take a break, bake and process emotionally while I did that.
What's your favorite thing to bake?
Favorite thing to bake? I mean, anything chocolate, pretty much, like
Same.
chocolate donuts and
Oh,
thin mints I got into for a while,
oh,
but yeah, I love making things in like cute shapes, like you know, and making an art project out of it that's like, I post them on my Instagram and I'm very unprofessional, you know, it's like not Instagram perfect, but I like sort of normalizing just doing this for fun, being childlike when it brings you joy, and like you don't have to have everything perfect, like just have fun with it.
I love that. If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
I guess the Buddha.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, and then favorite class you took at university?
Oh, there was in my senior year, like a media studies class that was about like technology and media, and like reading a lot of theory. There was the feminist cyborg manifesto, which is like a really good essay, and it led to doing this project for my final paper where I like went on chat roulette and interviewed all the dicks and the boob seekers and like wrote this whole thesis on that, and that was really fun. Oh, and a precursor to like what was to come, obviously.
That's incredible. I love that so much. I wrote my undergrad thesis on vibrators, so
Nice.
yes, there you go. Awesome. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show that has queer bisexual representation?
Ooh, I mean, God, so many. I mean, recently, obviously, Hacks has been really cool for bisexual representation. Yeah, you haven't seen it? Hacks? No. Oh my God, you have to watch it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's on HBO. I'm excited for you. Let me know.
Oh, yes. Now I can see like the visual like ad for it on HBO.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the main actress, the younger one, she's like actually bisexual, and the representation of her bisexuality is really cool in that they actually use the word, first of all, like, and
doesn't happen often.
You know, they show her with various genders, and it's like, it's not a big deal, but it's also not erased, and like, it's just very refreshing and relatable. Like I think I hadn't seen so much where I'm like, oh, she's kind of like my vibe, where it's like, it's like kind of femme, but kind of dykey, like she's bisexual. Like, I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
You don't have to, the fluidity is there. You don't have to fit into a neat little box.
Yeah.
Okay, and last rapid fire question. Do you have a favorite celebrity or content creator who's bisexual that you follow on social media?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I guess I have to go with Jen because she's just been such a dear friend, and she really like helped me own the word and think about all this. So she's an inspiration.
Yeah. Shout out Jen. Okay, so we have so many questions in the chat for you. But first I want to read a few that we gathered in Geneva first. And Zoe in the chat submitted a few on Geneva, so I'm gonna read some of those. What does non-attachment look like for you now?
Well, yeah, so at the end of the book, you see Tashi, the aforementioned monk, helping me understand what non-attachment actually is, which means it's not indifference. You know, it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter to you whether you're in a bad, unhealthy relationship or not, and that you should just take whatever is, you know, thrown at you. It's an acceptance of impermanence and the fact that everything changes and not being attached to the outcome. So that means if a relationship's not working to you, non-attachment doesn't mean you should therefore just endure whatever. It means you can walk away and accept that, you know, things aren't working out. And I guess it also has brought in to be about much more than non-monogamy, and talking about trying to increasingly, not be attached to my ego, to my self-image, which is a real mindfuck when you publish a memoir, because like we're talking about, in some ways it like completely reinforces that separate self-ego and feeds it. On the other hand, it really does help to undermine it, because you see how like this representation of you, both that you've created and that other people are examining and critiquing and whatever, is not you. So then what is you? Nothing. It's this impermanent thing that you have to work to not be attached to. It's just a story. So I think I'm continually working with that as well.
Yeah, amazing. Zoe also wants to know, in response to the Bell Hooks quote at the beginning of the chapter, "Yes, Daddy," how can women claim themselves in a patriarchal society?
Ooh, that's like a $1 million question if I knew how to. I mean, I think that one thing is like owning our truth and our pleasure, and not letting, as much as possible, these outside structures determine the trajectory of our lives. To say, we don't have to necessarily get married or have children or be monogamous, but if we do want those things, that's fine too. But like examining all those things as, we have a right to have conversations around these. We have a right to not view them as the purpose of our lives, and to also just remember that we are the authors of our lives. And that's something I try to represent in here, is I kind of start out waiting for someone to rescue me, and then ending up at a place where, not to say I'm 100% cured of that at all, but I much more see myself as the literal, author of my story. But that's not something you have to write a book to do. We're constructing our story in every moment with every choice. And I think we're very conditioned to think, like Bell Hooks talks about in that book, that our romantic life or our life is going to happen to us, and we're sort of passive, whereas men are conditioned to think of themselves as the action hero, the protagonist. And those are very different ways to go through life. So I think to just remember, you are the protagonist of your own life. You don't need to wait for anyone to ask you out or give you permission to do something. Like it's up to you to live whatever your truth is, and that truth can change. It doesn't need to have a certain label or be forever defined.
I love that so much. Okay, and then Zoe's last, they had 2 more questions. One, do you have a favorite Broad City episode?
Oh my God.
Secret that Sapph-Lit knows, I've never seen Broad City.
Oh my God.
I know.
Yeah, you have to. I mean,
I know.
Admittedly, it's like better if you're high, and what was I like?
Well, that's
in
not
my early 20s. My favorite one. I mean, I do really love the pegging episode that I reference in the book. Like
I know about that episode for sure. I feel like that made its way into like my social media feeds, like a lot when it came out.
Yeah, I would say that one probably.
Okay, and then Zoe's last question is, where do you think the fear of being replaced that you describe in the chapter "Not Either Or" comes from?
From feeling like fundamentally insecure in ourselves and in our relationship. I think I experienced that fear hardly at all in my current dynamic, which tells me that both I've grown a lot in terms of my self-worth, but also that it's very dynamic dependent, and that whatever with Adam was really exacerbating that. There was good reason to feel like I would be replaced. That said, I've still felt that come up with other partners that, a few weeks before this book came out, I was dumped by another partner who I was like, for being monogamous. And there was the understanding the whole time that I was going to lose that partner potentially once they found someone to be monogamous with. And so that fear was still present and justified. And so it's just kind of, I guess continuing to work with that and trying to see how, even if other people might replace me, they're not, replacing actually me. And also, I'm here with myself no matter what. So the only person who can really promise to always be there for me is me, and continuing to commit to that relationship first and foremost. Yeah.
Okay, Sapph-Lit therapy session. I'm loving this. Okay, so this is the last community question, then we'll go to the chat. Meg asked, so they quote, "I laughed and winked back, humming with all the giddiness of someone who'd pulled off a heist. Can you still access this feeling when looking back on what you've gone through? If so, when does that come up? Is there any feeling comparable to the feeling that comes with surviving the way you have?"
Thank you. That's a great question. I've never been asked that. I mean, I think I do still access that giddiness. A lot of the times it's like dancing in nature, like I said, where I can really feel, there's like certain songs I listen to, which you can actually find on my Spotify. I have like a gratitude / tree worshiping.
Oh, I'm gonna find them.
And those are the ones that like help me connect and feel this sense of like, fuck yeah, like I did it, like it wasn't perfect and it wasn't everything maybe I had dreamed it could possibly be, but I did it. And certainly like moments like this, I feel that sense of fulfillment, or when I get those messages from people, I feel maybe not a giddiness, but just like, wow, that's, I guess if there's anything to supersede the feeling of survival and getting through the other side, it's the feeling of, wow, and then I got to pay this forward, I got to join the canon of books that might help people, feel empowered and understand their own lives, because I know that books have been such a crucial part of my own healing. So yeah, the giddiness comes from feeling like, oh good, like I got to, pay that forward in some way.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we're going to move to the chat. So Sophia asks, after being conditioned for so long to find your worth in Adam, do you still find yourself wondering what he thinks of your work?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, not so much the quality like I would have before. Like I feel more just like he would be impressed and that I kind of proved wrong any comments that I'm not ready to write a book or whatever else they would say, that it's not as serious or to write about your feelings. But yeah, I guess, like I said, I wonder how emotionally he's processed this, and I hope to have that conversation someday.
Yeah. What advice, this is also from Sophia, what advice do you have for someone wanting to write a memoir but not knowing where to start?
Well, read a lot of, not just memoirs, but just read a lot of novels. If there's, novels that are adjacent to the topic you want, or memoirs, read all of it. I have a list on BuzzFeed of 40 books that might help you write your book. And so that has a lot of good suggestions for memoir specific recommendations, craft books, novels that help me. And, I guess look at different story structures like the heroine's journey or other story structures that are out there, and see if you can create a timeline based on the experience you had and create a narrative arc out of this. Because remember, memoir is not autobiography, it's storytelling. So you want to make sure that whatever form you choose, that there's some sort of arc, and that you're being deliberate in what you choose to share and omit and how you structure it. So thinking about that. And of course, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available for consultations on that as well.
That's so nice. Thank you for offering that to the Sapph-Litties. I'm curious, do you have a favorite memoir that you've read? I have been on a memoir kick personally. I've read Educated, Know My Name, Jeanette McCurdy's new book. I'm currently, I have The Glass Castle and I Should Have Protected You from All of This lined up. So like I have a memoir kick going. Do you have any like books that I should add to that list?
Yeah, those are all great. And yeah, Educated was so good. It was one of those ones that was so hyped that I was like, man, I don't know. Like I was like,
and then you're like sobbing at like
Yeah,
1 in the morning,
totally.
finishing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I again, that list will have some good ones that I'm probably bringing from now. And Bell Hooks, a lot of her writing has meant a lot to me and really blends, memoir with sort of critical theory in a way that's interesting. But also recently, I loved Acceptance by Emmy Neatfeld. And
I
she's
have that
gonna
one.
be, on my podcast soon. And she's a friend. She's also bisexual. She's great. You should check out her book. It's amazing. It's about being in foster care as a teen and having a lot of self-harming, difficult behaviors, and then getting to a place where she ended up in Harvard. But it's also like not a standard, oh, and then I succeeded narrative that even kind of educated in some ways, reinforces of like, and then you transcend. Like she doesn't stop with getting into college. She shows how achieving that still didn't solve all her problems and the difficult things that came after. But yeah, I thought that was a really good memoir recently.
Okay, amazing. Adding that to my stack. I think they sent me the ARC, but I get sent so many books.
That's a great problem. Yeah,
It's
I really
a
like it.
fantastic problem to have. Okay, and then we have in the chat, Ezra, if there's one thing that you would tell the person you were while still dating Adam, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, just like you're not crazy.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing, keep recording this, keep figuring out, you will find your way out of this. There's things to be learned here, but yeah, you're not crazy. Like many things being said to you are not ways you should be talked to.
Yeah. And then Zoe has another question. You talked about jealousy being a smoke alarm. How do you process and respond to jealousy when you determine it is not a response to a fire?
Good question. Yeah. For this, I really recommend a few resources. Kathy Labriola's Jealousy Workbook and Love in Abundance, and also Multi-Amory. The podcast has so many good resources on this that are really useful. I think if I realize it's my own shit, the things that were useful was being able to sit with it, like having a meditation practice, very important, I think, to navigating non-monogamy or jealousy, because that's going to help you separate, your feelings and your thoughts without invalidating your feelings, and to kind of see more clearly, what responses are based on something that you need to work on versus maybe you're in a situation that's unnecessarily triggering and difficult. So yeah, I really recommend for many reasons having a meditation class. Practice.
I used to have a meditation practice and haven't been able to get back into it, but one of the things that it taught me was that your thoughts are not who you are. And I feel that with jealousy, especially, that can be such a shame-filled emotion, and one that really like tears yourself down and your idea of yourself down. And just kind of having the idea that like thoughts are just things that like pass through, and they do not define your worth and your sense of self, unless you let.
That's great. And I would just add, I want to write more about this, but I have an article from several years ago on bustle that's like, I think if you Google ways to meditate that aren't sitting, bustle, you'll find it, and those are other ideas. And I'm just a big proponent of, there's other ways to meditate or incorporate mindfulness and presence than sitting. And that it might be that if you're having trouble having a practice, you just haven't found the right gateway yet. And so there's lots of other ideas there. And like I said, like dancing in nature, if you're totally present with it, you can think of that as a form of prayer and meditation. Why not? Meditation is about being present with an object of that you're deciding to focus on. And when your mind wanders from it, you just come back to that and notice your thoughts. So it can be anything. You can meditate on a baby picture of yourself to cultivate compassion. You can stare at a candle flame. You can lie down and scan your body as the object of meditation. So you know, it's not for everyone that the best pathway is focusing on the breath while sitting. So that's just something to keep in mind, to keep exploring other options.
Yeah, I love that. And then we have Tim asking, is there anything that you would do differently while dating Adam? Looking back on it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, it's hard to say because I don't really
It's in the past.
any of it. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would have asked some more direct questions about things that I found out were being hidden that were in retrospect very unsafe, but that I didn't, you know, I kind of made assumptions that he would tell me about something so serious and wouldn't hide things. But I think I maybe should have been more direct about asking those questions and protecting my own safety that way.
Yeah. But also what's done is done. And
yeah,
I think you handled it great. And also this entire memoir came out of it, which is, you know, I don't want to say like best case, but like you made something so beautiful out of it. That like, why do anything different if this is where it led you?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So Zoe just says, loved your book so much. And thank you for your super thoughtful responses. And then Sophia says, I just pulled up your Spotify playlist and Blackbird was the song that helped me heal after being gaslit in a narcissistic relationship. And thank you for answering my questions.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing to hear. It's such a good song. Yeah, and that one is a cover by Gregory Porter that's amazing, and I haven't been able to find it like anywhere else but Spotify. It's really random, but really recommend that cover.
Yeah, I will definitely be listening to that later today. Well, that was all of the questions, Rachel. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, to chat with us, and I'm so happy this was a Sapph-Lit pick, and I really hope that we stay in touch and can't wait to see what you do next, whether it's with psychedelics or whatever it may be.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you everyone who was here the whole hour, and please feel free to like reach out to me. Like I said, those messages really keep me going. So I'd love to hear from you on Instagram or Twitter. My DMs are open. And also just a favor, if you have read Open, to leave a star rating or review on Amazon and Goodreads. It actually really helps a lot, even if it's just a line. It juices that algorithm so more people can find it. And of course, the old-fashioned way of just tell your friends, share it. I really appreciate that.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in Geneva. And Rachel, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.